Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Early Wedge. This is the live show. We'll be doing this every single Wednesday for the balance of the golf season, along with 4 other shows. We'll tell you about the schedule later. But if you're watching us on the SportsLine YouTube channel, you're certainly in the right place. If you're watching us on the Golf on CBS channel, it's being simulcast there, but you're going to want to jump over to SportsLine at least within the next couple of weeks and make sure you subscribe to this SportsLine YouTube page. Of course, this show will be in your Early Edge podcast feed as well. I've got Rick Gehman. I've got Patrick McDonald. And Patrick, so many people want to know, are you running for president? Like, what was that picture on the thumbnail? Like, what was that look all about? There's already comments about it, but I'm actually going to start with Rick because, Rick, you finally, for once, get to kind of chill a little bit. How you feeling?
I'm nervous. I like to be in control, Sia. When the music stopped playing after the countdown, I almost just jumped in and was like, "Welcome to the early wet." I almost just hit it. I don't know what direction we're going. I do feel a little liberated. I might be Patrick might egg me on. I might be the class clown for today. I don't know, but it is definitely a different feeling. I'm excited for you to be the captain, and I just get to come along for the ride.
Well, Tubin certainly wants to know if you love or hate not being the host. So
I'll let you know in like 45 minutes.
The jury's still out on that. We're going to cover, here's the thing, before we get to you, we're going to cover what you all want to cover. We got some things to talk about. Patrick, talk to us. So that picture, you were like on the stoop. It looked like you were running for president. Like, what was that about?
It was just, I was hanging out with my good friend, Derek Jeter, at the PGA show. Cameras were everywhere. People were behind us, kind of like a college game day environment. But I am nervous as well for Rick not being in the host chair because I think his knowledge could potentially expose my lack of and perhaps my stupidity. And so having the brain of Rick Gehman unleashed, I think is great for everyone, but me, perhaps. So
who took this photo? Did you have cameraman Greg with you down there?
There was just a PGA of America guy following me, taking photos. That's obviously Derek Jeter in the middle, and then Patrick McDonald's there on the left. To the right, that is Chris Riccobono, who I don't think we got off to a great start in our relationship. I'll just leave it at that.
Wow. Well, can we just real quick before we get to some jump off points for the Cognizant Classic? How was it like talking to Jeter? Was he cool? Was he kind of like cold? What was the warmness level? What was the vibe?
He was great before we got mic'd up. We were just really shooting the crap, I guess, since keeping it PG and all, you guys, but once he got the mic on, I quickly became aware that he's not going to be giving anything good to a guy in a zip up quarter vest at a PGA show golf exhibition.
Think about a guy who dealt with New York media for 20 years and then also became in the front office and had to deal with those. There is nothing he is unprepared for. And Patrick is definitely not going to get him off balance.
Yeah. I asked him about MJ, his relationship. I'm like, I'm sure you have some good tales from the golf course. He's like, yeah, but I'm not telling you anything. I was like, all right, cool. So this clothing company, pretty nice, huh?
Very, very cool stuff. I love the name dropping already. I got to think of some names to drop myself. All right, let's drop the Cognizant Classic. Rick, talk to me about, we're in Florida now. So what is the biggest thing right now? Is it just that we're in Florida? What's your big takeaway heading into the Cognizant Classic?
This to me is almost a little bit of a mini reset. It sounds weird, right? We're just going to a different state. These guys play golf all over the world. It shouldn't be that big of a deal, but the data and like the anecdotes kind of say different. There's just a lot of different things about Florida golf, and because we do get it 4 weeks in a row, it's going to become very apparent. So this is not just a jumping off point for now for the Cognizant, but for basically the next month. And Florida golf is different. Outside of Innisbrook, you get a lot of flat golf courses with a ton of bunkering, a ton of water, guys that are going to make doubles and triples who are going to lose a sleeve of golf balls. You also, for the most part, get Bermuda throughout. So these guys that have played on the West Coast that have been dealing with Poana greens now getting a better putting situation, an easier, in theory, putting situation. These guys that are maybe from the DP World Tour, maybe coming up from the Korn Ferry, a lot of these guys live in Florida. It's just going to be a different vibe. There's going to be a lot more guys that are comfortable, and I would not be surprised to see somebody who has struggled in 2025 to start the year kind of go on a little bit of a run right now. That's how different I think it is. And that's probably the last time that we're going to get, I don't want to say a venue change, but like a region change that I think is going to matter like this. So it's a very interesting time to try to handicap.
Interesting that you noted some names that maybe have struggled on the West Coast that might be good. Maybe we'll get into some of those names later. And again, this show is designed to circulate around you and your questions. So if you have players you want us to talk about, let us know. If you have questions in general, let us know. Patrick, I'm looking at the rundown, and it looks like you and Rick already kind of having this rivalry renewed as he kind of stole your jump off point. What you got now that he took yours?
Beat me to the rundown, just showing off how much
you snooze, he is you lose.
Yeah, not a good start. All I got is a good picture that we were able to talk to. But no, I'm curious. You look at the past champions of the Cognizant Classic, formerly known as the Honda Classic, and it's a lot of SEC boys, right? A lot of Georgia boys, kind of like Rick was talking about. And some of those guys played some really good golf there on the West Coast. Sepp Straka comes to mind. A winner, almost won at Pebble Beach as well. A winner at this golf tournament too. Russell Henley played well on the West Coast. He's a winner at this golf tournament. But you also have other Georgia boys like, I don't know, Keith Mitchell is a winner here. And he's been putting together a great ball striking year, honestly, dating back to last season. And he has been pretty vocal about how much he hates Poa annua greens. And so will the switch to a comfortable Bermuda, unlock Keith Mitchell, so to speak? Who knows? And so I think just will that form from the West Coast for the guys who did have it, will that translate to the comfy confines of Florida, or maybe something happens? And also, I mean, I didn't put it in the rundown because it said the biggest single question of the week, but I've already got one eye on Augusta National, guys. I'm already looking at the Masters. You look at the last 3 years, who has won the Masters? It has been the best player in the world. It's been pretty simple the last 3 years with Scheffler, Rahm, then Scheffler. And right now, I think, it's still definitely Scheffler, but this Florida swing could answer a lot of those questions too.
Rick, it looked like you had something to say when he brought up Augusta.
I think it's sharp. There is a lot of corollaries between the way golfers play from January 1st of that year to the Masters and their success that week. It's obviously not the only thing that matters, but it is very, very difficult to win at Augusta National if you don't come in some level of form. There are a lot of events, the Open Championship, if we're talking about majors, there's a lot of events on the PGA Tour schedule where form is not necessarily a prerequisite. It is at Augusta National. So again, I try to lump this all together. Like these 4 weeks, it's all Florida golf. It's a couple of big events. It is the lead up to the Masters. Like we are going to learn a lot this month about a lot of players.
Absolutely. Okay. So we already have so many questions coming in, and the plan is to answer all of these questions, whether it's a betting question or just a general golf question or a DFS question. We've got, like, Rick, I'm looking at your ownership on rickrungood.com, which of course is not final ownership by any means, but we've got the sort of the DFS side covered as well. Let's get to all of your questions and to a lot of sort of what we're going to address tournament to tournament on this Wednesday live chat. Let's do that right after this message from our partners.
Gives it to Jenkins for the championship. A 16 beats a 1. From sweet to elite to the Final Four.
We're back on the early wedge, which again will be every Wednesday at 10:30, this live show. I do want to mention we've got the Monday and Tuesday show at 7. That's the DFS and the betting show. Friday, we'll have the recap of round 1 and round 2, setting you up for the weekend of golf. And then Sunday, we're going to have a live show just talking about live bets and what's going on the course and matchups and things of that nature, maybe make you a little bit of money, but also we'll look ahead to the upcoming week in terms of a bit of a course preview. Let's get started with Fire Sports has some questions about Adam Svensson and Chris Kirk. Obviously, Chris Kirk, a former winner here, not exactly in the best form, Rick. Let's start with Svensson, though. Svensson's a guy that in DFS at 6,900, I kind of looked at and thought, okay, well, this guy's better than everybody else in the 6K range, or at least for the most part. His stats really aren't that bad. The ball striking is pretty decent. The around the green play, pretty decent. The putter, predictably not pretty decent. Any thoughts on Svensson this week?
Yeah, I think that it's both these guys are not in great form. And I think that's probably why the question comes up, because they get kind of deflated down to salaries where they start becoming appealing again. To me, Svensson is in a safer position. He's not playing great golf. He's not playing poor golf. He's piling up a bunch of like top 30 finishes, and he's struggling with the putter. That's not the end of the world. The Chris Kirk stuff, I think, is a little bit more risky, but a little bit more interesting. And I think this goes to what do you want? Are you looking for a first round leader, a small sample size guy who can pop? That might be Chris Kirk. Are you looking for somebody to round out your lineups in fantasy games where you would take a T29? Like, okay, maybe it's Adam Svensson. So there is a little bit of personal preference here. The good news about Chris Kirk is the good news. He is losing so many strokes putting that if he goes out and gains like two strokes putting in a week at a golf course that he has played well at, in a region that he generally putts much better at, he's gained strokes here in 4 of his last 5 trips, including that victory in 2023. If we get a +2 with the putter, it takes him from being outside the cut line to like being top 15, which is a huge opportunity to just swing that one stat profile. So I see a lot of room for improvement out of Chris Kirk. I see that Adam Svensson is kind of hovering in this just slightly average or above average zone.
Patrick, I got to ask you about Chris Kirk's putter. I mean, this is like so incredible. I thought Adam Svensson's putter looked bad, but like, and I agree. It's like a different surface and all those things. Like when you see somebody consistently losing 2, 3, 4, almost 5 strokes with the putter, are we talking like mental block? Like it feels like something is just way off here.
And it's weird because he has such great tempo in his full swing, and it does translate on the greens, but he's going through different models, different putters, and he's really been a bad putter since that Century win. I mean, 2024 was really bad on the greens, and he played a lot of golf left-handed there in the offseason, try to get, mentally fresh, and it has not translated through the first couple months of the season. It's been really bad. Was really bad there in Phoenix too.
Jeez.
So it's really, just to echo what Rick said, there's a lot of potential there. If the putter does come around at a golf course where, look, he has putted well the last half decade or so. So that's a great positive for him. But also you will be like kicking yourself when you're on Shot Tracker and he misses a 3-footer. And it's like, well, you could have seen that one coming too. So it's a double-edged sword there for Kirk.
Can I just say, I didn't realize we were going to have rickrungood.com up
Either
here.
did I.
It's awesome. I was going to ask, like, Rick, you're not controlling that, right? That's Josh.
No, Josh made that screenshot and annotated it or whatever it's called, like in 3 seconds. If it's easier, I can share my screen, but I like what you did. That looks very good.
This is great. I mean, again, this is what the live show, like, I didn't even know we were going to have access to this. And I think this is the best golf database out there. I think it always has been. And this is really cool. And even if you don't agree with that, like maybe some people like other stuff, I don't know, Rick, but like, this is super cool to have this on this show.
At the very least, I mean, like the data is it's not my data, right? It's just a way to put it into, like Chris Kirk's putting numbers are not different on rickrungood.com or PGAtour.com. They're just like, he stinks at putting, and that's just illustrating it here.
So I want to get to a bunch of other questions. We're going to get to all your questions, but I feel like I kind of want to go in order here. Christian Hartley, let's just get to a Tiger Woods conversation really quick, because it doesn't really pertain to the Cognizant Classic. Patrick McDonald, Christian Hartley says, what will Tiger Woods' best finishing position be in 2025? Obviously, you got to calculate, well, how many tournaments is he actually going to play, and then answer it from there.
His best finishing position will be a miscut in 2025.
Rick?
He's already had it. Jupiter Links 1. So that is a 1 in that column. No, I will give him, I am very bearish on this, but I will give him like the opportunity to make the cut at the Masters, like T49, like, something like that, where he plays okay for the first 2 rounds, struggles over the next 2. I do not think the game is remotely close. And if he gets into bigger fields at courses that he's not so great at, it's 2 rounds and that's all.
Yeah, I'll go with 53rd, and that sounds like somewhat optimistic, just like Rick's answer.
He might play like twice.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's the thing. That's the thing. Let's go to Joseph Boza's question. So this is an interesting question just from a theoretical standpoint. Patrick, I'll start with you again. Given Shane Lowry's history at this tournament, is it the right move to bet him when he is the favorite at around 20-1? So the reason I think this is an interesting question is, like, I kind of go both ways here in the sense that I like that the fact that the top of the board is like Henley and Lowry, because to me, it allows me to play guys down the board. But at the same time, it's a pretty difficult test. So I don't want to take guys too far down that I don't think can survive the test over 4 days. The Mexico Open, it's a little bit of a different analysis because it's an easier course. How do you feel about Shane Lowry, guys like Russell Henley, sort of toward the top there?
I'm out on Shane this week. I like to bet Shane Lowry in a strong field at like 70-1, 60-1, something in that range. And you look like the Open this past year would have been a great example of that, or even Pebble Beach this year where he finished runner-up to Rory McIlroy. That's kind of where I like to attack a Shane Lowry bet, and just being the favorite for a guy who hasn't won in the U.S. since 2015, I think, with that being his only individual win. He did win, I think, the BMW PGA Championship a few years back. That was a shortened event. But if you're paying up for someone at 20-1, it's not going to be Shane Lowry for me. No, I got to attack him 50-1 or higher in a big boy field, I think.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Shane Lowry's not on my card. Rick, the highest, or I should say lowest odds guy I have is Sepp Straka at 28-1. I guess 25-1 in a lot of places at this point. But what are your thoughts on Lowry or just the top of the board in general?
Yeah, that's fair. So I agree with the I think what Patrick is saying about Shane Lowry is actually a compliment, and I agree with it. It is that you don't need to bet him at 20-1 as the favorite because he's good enough to win when he has his best stuff in a lot of different fields on a lot of different golf courses. I was just kind of clicking through some of the events that he has been this short, where expectations have been this high. So I'm just looking through the shortest odds he's ever had. MDF at the Wyndham in 2022. Remember those? T5, T10, T3, T43, T32. I mean, those are great finishes. None of them are victories. I have started my card. It was early in the week. I just went and clicked Daniel Berger's name very early, and that is where I have lived at the top of the board. I'm still comfortable with that, but Lowry would probably be a third behind maybe a fourth. Like it'd be like Berger, Straka, and then a tie between Russell and Shane. Probably feels like my card.
Yeah, by the way, oversight on my part, because I also bet Daniel Berger, and I also got him at 28. But again, I guess at this point you're kind of stuck with the 25s. Berger, Straka, this was on the betting show yesterday, which again, every Tuesday, 7:00, it's me, it's Patrick, of course, EC, and Jason Sobel. But I had Hodges as a long shot. I'll probably add somebody sort of in that range to it. But my 4 outrights as of now are Sepp Straka, Daniel Berger, Denny McCarthy, and Nikolai Højgaard. And those are both 28-1s, 25s, and then 40 on Denny, and then a 55 on Højgaard. Any reaction to any of those names? Go ahead, Rick.
So sorry, Sia. The Lee Hodges withdrew, so that does open up some funds for you and everybody else who already had that wager in there. So that returns a little bit of action. But I think that's fair. I mean, I don't know how you normally build your betting cards, but a lot of similar names, especially. And I have a lot of exposure to Højgaard, but mostly in the top 10 market.
Rick, I got a name to throw at you, and I threw it at Sia and the guys last night, and they pretty much asked me to quit.
Okay.
But what if I told you there was a man in this field, a man, not a boy, who won in 2023? Wow. He won in 2024 also. He has never missed a cut at PGA National. Gained strokes on approach last week. The putter has been great, and he's 500-1. Are you interested in that? Interested in something like that?
Who he won in 2023, he won in 2024, he gained strokes on approach last week, and he's 500-1. It's not Jim Herman.
I'm so happy you just brought up Jim Herman's name. I just think it's funny
because he had those two wins. That would have been like 2022, 2023,
and
he could be 500-1.
First names, if that helps.
Davis Love? No, he wouldn't have.
Oh, you're so close.
Oh,
you had it.
Davis.
Yeah.
Riley?
Yes.
Riley?
Davis Riley's 500-1 in this event?
Yeah. 500-1.
Yeah, he's been miserable.
Yeah, the results.
Listen, I would bet Davis Riley before I bet Kevin Kisner, who's probably down at that side of things,
right.
but
I'll take it.
No, that's not for me.
Take
But
it.
hey, I appreciate you going that deep down the board.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some fun names down there. If we have time, maybe we'll get to some. Patrick, let me ask you, Joseph Boza has another question here on Luke Clanton. Now, when we did the DFS show, I will tell you that Mike McClure, and Rick, you remember, Mike McClure liked some of the bombers on this course. He liked Minwoo Lee, who was great at TGL yesterday, by the way. Like, guys, just so fun to watch. But Luke Clanton was another guy that Mike McClure really liked. Patrick, Luke Clanton, I don't like the game. I don't like the form. I'm willing to invest in him long-term, but not short-term. What are your thoughts in DFS I think 7,900. I thought it was 7,700. Either way, DFS or betting. What do you think of Luke Clanton?
I think he's going to secure his PGA Tour card this week. I think he's going to make the cut. You talked about the form, missed the cut by a stroke at Phoenix, but then came back, won a college event there, the Water Sound Invitational. Who could forget a true where were you moment, Sia? And so I think he's going to carry that momentum. You got to remember he's a Florida State kid, going to be comfortable on golf courses like this, a ton of power, a ton of upside. And so I think he makes the cut and could threaten that top 20. And the thing about Clanton is once he kind of gets a sniff or a whiff of the contention, he goes and gets it, right? He has a number of really good finishes. He had 4 top 10s last year, top 15 there at the Farmers Insurance Open already. So a ton of upside. It's hard to look past.
Yeah, that sentiment is why I like Sepp Straka, by the way, because I think on Sunday, and even though Denny, who doesn't win, I do think he's a guy that can lock in on a Sunday as well. That's part of the reason those guys are on my outright card. Rick, any thoughts there on Luke?
In the moment, I like him more in first round leader showdown situations. You were right, Sia. He is $7,700 on DraftKings this week. It is tangibly different the way he's hitting approach shots since he first came on tour, and he was gaining 3 or 4 strokes on approach every single week. He's lost in 4 straight. Now he is good enough to overcome a lot of that. My other concerns are still around since he's been a professional and as expected from somebody who is still as raw as he is, the short game is like pretty bad. And if you are if this was playing a lot more difficult, I'd be out on Luke Clanton because getting up and down for par is so critical. I think he is good enough to overcome some of these deficiencies, but it is, for me, I would prefer him in smaller sample sizes, single round matchups, showdown slates, first round leaders, things of that nature.
All right, we've got a lot of questions. One I see from Tyler Miller regarding ownership. We're going to get to that in a second. Let's cover a couple of other names that I think are interesting to a lot of people. I mean, Scott Kobe asked about Sepp Straka. Can he get a win in this tournament? I think we all agree, whether we have him on our card or not. Like, Sepp Straka is a winner, and in this field, he can win. And he's
already won this tournament.
Yeah. So Scott, he's in great form. Like, again, I made this point yesterday. Maybe it's a bad point. Maybe it fell on deaf ears. But I think if Sepp Straka's name was Patrick Cantlay, and we were looking at his stats, and we were looking at, granted, there's some bad finishes in there, but there's some wins too, or whatever, just any name, Colin Morikawa, I think we would look at it and be like, okay, this guy is, win viable. But because his name is Sepp Straka, he just sort of drops in the odds and in people's consciousness. Let's go to Andrew Novak. So I look at his stats, Patrick, and they're not super impressive. I understand he's kind of a winner in the sense that, like, he's really performed. He's flashed the upside like he did at the Farmers, but the ball striking just really isn't there for him. The putter's really been carrying him. So I'm out on Novak. What are your thoughts?
I think 50 to 1's pretty steep for someone like Andrew Novak. But I love this guy's game in general. I wrote him up this offseason as a name to watch, and no big deal. He's been paying some early dividends in 2025. But you look at his finishes, especially in the big events, a couple top 15s there at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am and the Genesis Invitational. So what's not to like? I think the iron play can be sketchy, a little up and down. But altogether, he's a super well-rounded player, someone who it took a little bit more time to get his feet underneath him at the professional level. And it seems like he's really comfortable out there now, and the results back that up. So I like him. I just think 50 to 1's a little short.
Well, look at the results, right? Runner-up, T35, cut third, 13th, cut 13th. When he's in the mix, it's great. When he doesn't have the good stuff, it's not like he's grinding out top 25 finishes. So when I see something like that, I agree with Patrick that I would rather see this 75, 100 to 1. You do not have a ton of consistent win equity, but you've got it when he's in the mix. And he's not even a big enough name. He would actually be the perfect example of a guy to, like, when we have our chat on Friday night, if he is lurking around the top 10, I would rather invest there than getting in on him before the tournament starts.
Yeah, I think he might be like a decent showdown play. I just think with the ball striking, he's going to find trouble. But it's a good point. I think this is a good live betting tournament. With all the trouble that lurks, I think you could have a guy that's 7 back after day 1, maybe 7 back after day 2, 6 back, whatever the case may be, at 50, 60 to 1 odds. That could absolutely, especially if the metrics are trending, chase somebody down. All right. The contrast to Andrew Novak, I mean, the consistency of Ben Griffin, Rick, it looks like he was showcased in your newsletter, says Matthew Amos. Talk to me about Ben Griffin, because obviously he rates out really well. He's probably going to suck up a little bit of ownership. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Ben Griffin rates out well for a couple of reasons. He's played great golf basically since the fall started. He is generally well-rounded, which on a golf course like this, the ability to make par, the ability to keep big numbers off the scorecard is very important. He's got a very sound short game, and yeah, he's played well on courses with water in play. He's played well in Florida. I am still a little bit reluctant to think that Ben Griffin is going to win this golf tournament. Now, the good news is, especially for fantasy slates, he's priced in a position where you do not need him to win. He is $8,500 on DraftKings. If he finishes inside the top 10, that is plenty good. So I think the way that I would be exposing myself to Ben Griffin, which is a weird phrase to say, is in fantasy markets, not necessarily outright betting markets.
Patrick, any thoughts on Griffin? I'll probably fade him in DFS just because he's getting enough ownership in that 8K range where I feel like I can just pivot to another unpopular 8K guy and just hope to get lucky from a DFS standpoint. But your thoughts on him to potentially contend in this tournament?
The biggest curiosity I have about Ben Griffin is if this driver form continues during the Florida swing, because he past couple of years has not been a good driver at all. But so far this year, I think he's gained off the tee every single start so far. But that has a way of changing during the Florida swing with all the trouble that's lurking. And so that's really my one big question for Ben Griffin is if the driver stays put where it is, where it's very good, I think he has a great chance to win one of these Gen Pop events, if not during the Florida swing, just throughout this year. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's maybe some regression there too.
I want to get into an ownership conversation, just a quick addressing of DFS ownership. But real quick, Fear Metro says, Davis Thompson, how do we feel about him? I mean, I'm out on Davis Thompson. Patrick, it sounds like you're in.
I'm always in on Davis Thompson, please.
Right.
This is just step 1 of a 12-step plan towards the Ryder Cup.
A breadcrumb. He has given us a breadcrumb that the tee to green play is back. And if you are comfortable with that small sample size, I think it's worth it because he's priced below Benny On. He's priced below Keith Mitchell. I prefer him to both of those guys, and he has legitimate winning upside. So yeah, pretty interested in Davis.
Yeah, I think I'm out on him. But again, if you play him in DFS and you go with that kind of bomber narrative where maybe the approach play is less important, and that would be fading the narrative, right? Because like guys like Minwoo Lee, Luke Clanton, they have not been dialed in on approach. Davis Thompson, if memory serves, has not been dialed in on approach. If you want to kind of like fade the narrative, those guys who can just get it off the tee make a lot of sense. All right, ownership. Rick, I was looking at Rick Run Good. And what's interesting, and I know these numbers may fluctuate because it's only Wednesday morning, but what's interesting to me is I kind of thought people would be unimpressed with Henley and Lowry at the top, and they'd start in the 9K range with like Berger and Straka, maybe a little bit of Denny, some of those guys. But what's happened is pricing is so soft, it seems like, that people are just like, well, I can just go ahead and grab one or two of these guys up here. And so what I'm seeing is that Russell Henley and Shane Lowry are in like the 25 plus trending towards 30% range, which is great for me because in DFS, I'm just going to go ahead and fade those guys. And guys like Daniel Berger, who I thought was going to be hyper popular, right now doesn't seem to be. What are your thoughts on this ownership situation? So
there's a couple of things, and there'll be another run of this here in the next few hours. But what it looks like is happening right now is a couple of things. About half of the lineups are picking either Russell Henley or Shane Lowry and starting there, which means half of them are starting in the 9K range. If they're starting in the 9K range, Daniel Berger is being squeezed out a little bit because he's the most expensive golfer in the 9K range. So Sungjae Im is getting a lot of run right now. Sepp Straka is definitely getting a lot of run. What I also think is happening is there is a real evolution of projected ownership where it starts to become aware of itself. And Daniel Berger, who has been the guy since Sunday night, and everybody has said Berger is now deflecting ownership because people know he's going to be popular, and it actually drops his ownership. So it doesn't happen every single week. Sometimes it happens with golfers, but it starts to become aware of itself. So I do think it is interesting that half of the lineups have chosen either Russell Henley or Shane Lowry. I would have thought it would have been closer to like 60 or 70% there.
Yeah, Patrick, any thoughts? Like when you're building DFS lineups, are you starting up top? Are you starting in the 9K range? Or are you just mixing it up?
I think for this week, it's really, do I think Russell Henley and Shane Lowry are going to win? No. And so I'm kind of picking some of those unpopular 9K guys. Like I don't like Sung Jae Im this week, but I think he could be kind of fun in that range because he's not playing great golf. And you have names like Daniel Berger out there, Sepp Straka in there, Denny McCarthy out there. But I'm more of a well-balanced build type of guy, typically, unless I find a name like Davis Riley at the bottom of the board.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is a good question from Razor Sharp. Where does ownership gravitate thanks to Hodges withdrawing? So he was in that low 7K range. I had said I thought he was a misprice at 7,400. He certainly was sucking up a good amount of ownership. Where do you think, Rick, I'll start with you. Where do you think that they pivot to?
Yeah, the problem was that range has so many golfers, just the ownership gets spread out in general. But where it looks like it has gone is a touch to Kevin Roy, a touch to Isaiah Salinda. Again, there's probably too many guys for any one golfer to see a huge tangible increase. I will also note that a little bit higher up on the board, just kind of looking at the trends here, Novak has gotten into a handful more lineups as of late. Kurt Kitayama has, and then also it looks like after tee times were released, Patrick Rodgers, who is, I believe, in the very first group out, got a little bit of a bump as well. So people are hoping to catch a little bit of very good soft conditions in the morning.
It does look like Echeverria is getting some attention as well, more than I thought. He's obviously playing great. Patrick, in or out on Echeverria?
Oh, I kind of like him, honestly. You think about where he's played well. Obviously, the RSM Classic there in the fall, Zozo Championship, a winner there too. So I know the ball striking has been great, particularly with the irons, but I think he's worth it. T21 last year too, so can get around here.
All right. Rick, I got to ask you about Bezettenhout because big Colts fan 497 says he did some RRG modeling, and with his inputs, he had CBS very high. Your thoughts on CBS?
Well,
on CBS?
Sure. Well, he probably modeled a lot with putting numbers because that is the strength of Christian Bezettenhout's game. I have a lot of him in season-long fantasy formats, and I'm quite concerned. You know, the ball striking has been abysmal. He's having to gain. I mean, he picked up 10 strokes in the short game in Phoenix and basically had to offset a lot of the other bad play from tee to green. So the path for him getting to the top of the board looks very narrow right now, and it looks like it is requiring him to be like a +6 or a +7 in the 2 short game categories. That is terrifying for me. This looks like a profile that is on the verge of being one of those guys. I don't know what his tee time is, but one of those guys that, like, when I wake up on the West Coast and like brew my first cup of coffee, he's already 6 over, something like that. He's in the afternoon, so that won't actually come to fruition, but it feels like that.
Patrick, are you one of those people that, because obviously we're on the East Coast now, and I don't know what time you wake up, but I actually, and Rick, I've talked to you about this before, I think on other shows, where I won't pay attention to golf for the first like hour and a half, 2 hours after I wake up. Like I like literally, and I wake up like relatively early, but the round's still going. I just don't want my dreams and hopes on a Thursday morning to be crushed immediately after I wake up. So I'll dial in, whatever at like 9:30, maybe 9:15, maybe I'll wait to 10 and I'll sort of like just see where everybody is at. But A, do you do that? I'm guessing the answer is no. But B, when you open whatever app you use, do you start at the bottom or the top to see where players stand?
I've started starting at the bottom this
Yes.
year, and it's electric. It's absolutely electric. It's so much better. You see the names earlier because it's been that type of year so far. But I don't turn it on right away. I ease into my Thursdays. I go for a nice walk, have a nice cup of coffee, say hello to the neighbors, water the plants, and then I have my correspondence, my sources being like, Denny McCarthy's leading this golf tournament. Get to your TV now, and then I'll get going.
Rick, talk to me about the process.
I mean, I'm like from the second I wake up, I'm in it, right? Yeah. And I'm setting an alarm at like 3:00 in the morning to turn on the early coverage. Yeah, you always go from the bottom. But listen, what you want in life is hope, and hope is a very powerful emotion. So when you start at the bottom and you scroll through the +3s and the +2s and the +1s, and you haven't caught anybody yet that you are heavily exposed to, and then you get to the evens and you think, okay, if I see a name now, I'm still okay because these guys are, they're even, it's early, there's still time. So it is all gravy from there. And then you keep scrolling, and then you see some donkey at the top of the board who's going to be there for the next like 10 minutes before he doubles. But it is, that's the only way to do it.
Yeah. This every Thursday morning, it's the same thing for me. So hopefully we can all wake up this Thursday for the Cognizant and be scrolling and continue to scroll before we see our first name, because we're starting from the bottom. I do want to say Mike McClure's in the chat. And as I mentioned earlier, Mike liked some of the people we perceive as bombers. He mentions Minwoo Lee, Luke Clanton, Gary Woodland are his first three in. Patrick, I'm going to start with you. If you could pick out one of those golfers to play in DFS or to bet, Minwoo Lee, Luke Clanton, Gary Woodland, who would be the one you'd pick out?
I think what's Woodland's outright number?
I think it's around 60.
I can get it for you.
He's the longest of the three, I'm guessing.
So Woodland is 55. Yes. Clanton is going to be 50, I see, and Minwoo is 30.
I'd go Woodland for an outright bet there. I know I think he missed the cut in the Genesis, but before that, it's been pretty standard Gary Woodland of some really good iron play and ball striking, and he has a really good history here too. So it could be a convergence of those two this week.
Rick?
I think it's Minwoo. I don't like the way his approach numbers are trending in the short term, but he has done significant improvements in that part of his game, which is the only part of his game that I'm worried about. I will cautiously say Minwoo.
So you don't think he'll be extremely fatigued from TGL last night?
I think he'll be just fine.
Fair enough. Let's see. I think we answered Rick Funcannon's question about Minwoo Lee. But this is an interesting take here too. Scott Kobe asks, how far down the board would you go? My answer would be in that 55 to 60 range. Like, I look at Nikolai Højgaard, who I think has some upside. I see Harry Hall, guys like Jonathan Vegas, I think are popular to some people, not really me. Brian Harmon at 60 to 1. As soon as I get to like the Bud Cauley range, Chris Kirk range, and I like Bud Cauley this week, I have him as a top 40. That's when I'm sort of out on a player that can win the tournament. Rick, how far down the board? And I understand we have our long shots and it's golf and there's variance and there's a 500 to 1 Davis Riley that somebody might want to put a couple bucks on. With that said, just like being like somewhat realistic, are we headed to 60 or shorter, Rick, or are we going longer than that?
I would go to Jake Knapp at 80.
Okay.
The immense talent, immense upside, winner on the PGA Tour, has played well at this golf course and is going in the right direction, where he has kind of plugged a lot of the issues in his game over the course of the last month or so. That's 80 to 1. He's there with Eric Cole. I think Jake Knapp is the farthest realistic option.
Patrick?
Well, I mean, I think this whole field could win this golf tournament. I mean, Davis Riley, Pat Kazire, a recent winner. He's down there at 400 to 1. He's always a little frisky. I like some of those guys around 100 that I mentioned. Ventura's been playing good. Highsmith's been playing good. Antoine Rosner, who could forget him? I mean, he beat Bryson DeChambeau in a match play about 7 years ago. That's a big point.
Yes.
Even someone like EVR, I know he hasn't been playing great. At least I don't think he has. He contended here last year. He's $150, it seems like. So I'd go a little longer, I think.
Danny Willett is interesting, only because he was brought up in yesterday's show too for some reason. And then I took a look and I'm like, well, it hasn't been terrible over the last few tournaments for Danny Willett. And we know he can win, although that was a very long time ago. I mean, I guess I'd be a no on Danny Willett. But as a DFS play, I mean, any interest, anybody?
No.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's see. J.R. Clark says, give me some DFS plays. Well, instead of giving like a bunch of plays, is there anybody maybe off the radar, Rick, that like not a lot of people are talking about that you saw in your profiling? Hey, this guy's a guy I want to play.
So we haven't talked about him yet. And when I ran a bunch of models, he just kept finding a way, and it would be Lucas Glover, which I get. So here, the good news about Glover is he's constantly playing out of the short grass. It is very unlikely that he hits his ball into trouble off the tee. He is still one of the best flushers that we have. And the question is always whether he is going to putt well or not. Well, he's picked up strokes putting in 5 out of 6. He's using that long broomstick lap style putter. He still misses a ton of putts, but overall he's still gaining. He has played this event like 20 times. Like, I'm not exaggerating. He's played this event 20 times. He's got a couple of top 10 finishes. I think that he is probably the guy. We're what, 40 some odd minutes into this. We have not mentioned his name yet. I don't think I've seen it in the chat, and he can actually win PGA Tour events. So for all of those reasons, Glover, I think, is pretty interesting.
Any thoughts, Patrick? Not on Glover, but just on somebody who's not really been talked about that you could plug into your DFS lineup.
Probably Taylor Moore at 7,600. I just love Taylor Moore. Talking about a guy who's won. He's won in the state of Florida a couple years ago, and the form's honestly pretty solid. So already a couple top 10 finishes this year, and he's driving the ball kind of like Griffin as well as he has. So I think that'll come in handy around here.
You know, nobody's really talking about Alex Smalley. Do y'all have any thoughts on him? Because the metrics really speak to me. And again, and he's at what, 7,900, I think. I just feel like even in the betting department, Smalley's a guy that's just getting overlooked. Rick, any thoughts on him?
Yeah. So Sans Lee Hodges, who is now out of this field. I actually thought Smalley was another guy who was a little bit mispriced. I thought he should have or could have been 8,500, 8,700. Nobody would have batted an eye at it. He's been awesome in 2025. You know, he's played 5 times. 4 of them are 21st or better. The metrics are well-rounded. He's not as reliant on the putter anymore. Like, yes, it is all very good stuff for Smalley. I think that he is probably $800 too cheap.
Yeah, agree with you on Smalley. We have a question about, by the way, for more DFS plays, just recall that we have the DFS show every Monday at 7, and it's in your feed, whether you watch the replay on YouTube or in the Early Edge podcast feed. It's in there. So we got a lot of Mike McClure, who's in the chat, was a part of that show as well. A lot of great plays from Rick, from Mike, and perhaps from myself. We'll have to wait and see. Mitchell Smith says, Billy Ho back in Florida. I wonder if he's under the radar a little bit. Patrick McDonald, any thoughts on Billy Horschel?
I dig it. I like Billy Horschel this week. He's a guy who's won, I think, up to 10 times around the world. People always mention the PGA Tour, but he's won the biggest event on the DP World Tour twice now. And so the iron play has been really good. The putter's been uncharacteristically cool on the West Coast. You think, okay, you come back to Florida, a Florida guy like Billy, that flips, and bada bing, bada boom, he's in contention. So I do like Billy Horschel throughout the Florida swing.
Rick, I saw a matchup. I think it was a round 1 matchup that I immediately gravitated to, and then I put on the brakes. It was Billy Horschel, I think minus 110 each way over Cameron Young. And I'm like, okay, Cameron Young's just not playing well at all. I did look at his history here, though, and I did like it gave me some hesitation, especially with Billy not completely striking it super well. I still like it, but any thoughts on that matchup or just Billy Horschel in general?
I think I would have a hard time trusting either of those guys.
Yeah.
I would love to pick on both of them, quite honestly. The Billy Horschel stuff is interesting because he is usually a very streaky golfer, and he foreshadows everything. He usually does not snap out of a slump with a victory or with a great week. He usually builds up to it, and he is slumping right now. Since that win that Patrick mentioned, BMW PGA Championship, it's ugly. It's ugly with the putter, which is a strength of his game. He's losing a lot of strokes off the tee. The finishes are not there. He's missing more cuts than he is making. I would be picking on both Billy Horschel and Cam Young.
All right. Yeah, I think that's probably. But if you wanted to pick on one more than the other, would it be Cameron Young?
No, big bully, Rick.
The Cam Young stuff is really bad. Sure. I mean, at least I know Billy will grind for me. Billy's a sicko. Billy is like a total sicko and will gouge Cameron Young's eyes out if it means him getting like one better position. So I trust Billy to grind for me. I do not trust Cam Young to grind for me.
This is we're going to wrap up in just a few minutes here because we've gone we're approaching an hour mark here, but Ryan Collins asked, where should I reinvest my last $10 or euros, it looks like, with his void bet from Hodges? He had him at 75-1. He's looking for a guy in that range. He's playing the each ways as well. Here, let me just give one answer. If you're like looking to, if you're strict with your bankroll and you have like this money left over, you could save that for a live outright. I'm just throwing that out there because I do think this tournament caters to having some value there. Looking at those odds, like in that, 60 to 100-1 range, the one that jumps out to me is Ryan Gerard and probably interesting. I like Jacob Bridgman for some reason and Bud Cauley. Like those are three names that I kind of like. Patrick, I'll start with you this time. Anybody in that range that you like to swap in?
60 to 100-1.
Patrick, do you know how much 10 euro is worth in USD?
That's a good question.
I have it up in front of me. Don't cheat.
Ooh,
I think it's
like 13.
Oof,
it's higher, right?
It's only $10.51. Very, very close.
Oh, okay. Wow. What is Trump? What is Trump doing? No, I'm kidding. I would go with a name we haven't talked about, CT Pan, around 100-1. He has a really good history here, and I kind of always had a soft spot for the Panimal, so I'd go with him.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. We've already talked about him. It's Jake Knapp. He's 80-1. He's right in the range that you had Lee Hodges. So like that's where I would go. I don't mind saving it for Friday night, but
yeah,
Hodges, or Knapp, excuse me.
Yeah, Friday night. Speaking of, Rick, you'll be hosting that recap show.
Yeah, what time is that at?
I guess is it just like kind of after the round? Like
probably when the round's over. Yeah.
So you're going to want to tune into that. Obviously, it's a recap, but looking ahead to the weekend. I do want to mention, and thanks for all the questions. We're going to get to these questions every single Wednesday, or at least most of the questions. If we missed your question, you can tweet at us or message us or whatever the case may be, and we'll try to get back to you. But I feel like we need to mention weather. It doesn't look like we're going to have like a wave advantage, at least as of now. It doesn't look like the wind is going to be super high impact, relatively low, both Thursday and Friday. Rick, is that what you've seen as well?
It's nothing. Beautiful Florida weather here. No, especially Thursday and Friday. They're carbon copies of one another. There is a chance it gets a touch windier on Sunday afternoon, but we are well out from that, and it is not really going to be substantial. So no, this looks like pretty ideal conditions all week long.
Patrick, I mean, that's what I'm seeing too. You are the Jim Cantore whisperer. Your feud is longstanding. I don't know if you've communicated with him, but how's the weather looking?
I'm just going to echo what you guys are saying. I think we're probably looking at the same things.
Do you have Jim's number? Do you have Jim's phone number?
I plead the fifth on that one.
Yeah,
I can neither confirm nor deny.
We're going to get to the bottom of that story, Rick. There's some funny business going on.
I think he does.
Yeah.
It's a manufactured beef.
Exactly.
Just to drive up engagement.
It's working.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Somebody asking if this show is going to be this Wednesday show at the same time every Wednesday, and it is. So I'm going to do the early edge at 10 o'clock, and then I'm just going to float right in here with Patrick and with Rick, and we're going to do this show. And again, it's going to be audience driven. We want to answer your questions, give out some of our info and intel while doing it. But hopefully this is kind of the back and forth that we can cultivate with all of you. And so if you're listening to the podcast, make sure you tune in live and we'll answer your questions next Wednesday at 10:30. Gentlemen, that'll do it. Any final thoughts? Any final quips, Patrick McDonald?
Nah, I got nothing. I'm all quipped out.
All right. Rick Gehman?
Nope. All good. Good luck, everybody.
Well, Rick, can you what's the verdict? This is the one show you're not hosting. How did you feel? Was it fun?
Loved it.
Not fun?
Loved it. Yeah.
Really?
I just get to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I get to look at Patrick's facial expressions the whole time. It's like just the best. I love it.
This has been fun. And we got Mike McClure in the chat too, which is always great. He's answering some of your questions as well. Maybe you'll see him in here next week. You'll certainly see him all over this early wedge coverage 5 days a week. He'll be on that Sunday live show with me, among others. I think we've got a cast of 4 on that show, and Mike McClure is included. His live betting acumen is just top notch. So, ladies and gentlemen, what a great show. Josh has been crushing it. Real big props to Josh on the 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s. And we got Rick Gehman here. We got Patrick McDonald. On behalf of all of us from the early wedge, we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us, folks.